Before we begin this program, I just want to thank our members of WAL Plus. You all make this possible. Thank you so much for being a part of our Patreon, and everybody can go join at wearelibertarians.com/support. But we want to thank, first and foremost, our $100 a month members. That is John Pusilo, 7th, from the Discord. You can join the Discord at wearelibertarians.com. Casey Feldposh, Matthew Durbin, Jeff Bennett, Reinhold, Christy Avery, Jason Doolittle, and Ed Brehab. Thank you all so much for being supporters, and thanks to everyone who subscribes to WAL Plus.
All right, let's get back to some boring subjects.
Understand the risk to our country.
Freedom brings people together.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to the program. My name is Chris Spangle. It's great to be with you. Today we're going to be talking about Remso Martinez's path to libertarianism. Very excited to talk to him. Very interesting guy, and I think you'll really enjoy the conversation. Stay tuned right after this.
Warning. This show is for adults by semi-adults, so the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to the Chris Spangle Show. Our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. If you struggle to understand politics, we explain it from an independent libertarian point of view. With all of the irreverence it deserves, we toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, Chris Spangle, a 15-year veteran of politics and media.
Welcome to the program. It's great to see you today, and, to be heard, I guess. We're not seeing anybody right now in this horrible, horrible pandemic. But today we've got something a little more fun, a little more lighthearted than all of that doom and gloom. We have one of my favorite people on earth, one of the hosts here on the We Are Libertarians podcast network. His show is On the Run with Remso Martinez, which you can get at wearelibertarians.com. Remso, thank you for joining me. How are you today?
Chris, I'm doing great. You mean we're not going to just go ahead and talk about the dun-dun dark winter?
Oh, I know.
I wanted to say that all week. It sounds like something straight out of a comic. Coming this fall, dun-dun, the We Are Libertarians crossover event of the millennia, Dark Winter.
It will be depressing and sad because Chris Spangle will be there.
There's nothing new on Netflix.
I don't believe that's true. We've reached the point where I predicted we'd get here, and that there'd be an annoying amount of these services, and you'd end up paying monthly what you pay for cable. You might as well just get cable, pay the $200 a month, because you have so many darn monthly subscriptions. Like, I don't even know what Peacock is, but I got to get it now because I like The Office. It's very. Is there like a comic book version of that?
There are, and not all of them are great. I host a show with Mark Clare called the Second Print Comics Podcast, and the annoying thing with that was there are only so many comics we can physically own or buy. So we've got a few apps like Marvel Unlimited where we can get all the new Marvel comics, except they rotate things out pretty fast, and usually by the time something is out, it's usually a bit dated, and then we wonder, do we really want to talk about it? And then there's another service called Hoopla, which for some people it'll make their ears bleed because it's basically serviced through the public libraries, where you just get a library card and you can access digital comics for free. And then you've got others like Comixology, but I gotta tell you, Chris, there's nothing like actually physically holding one in your hands. Yeah. I will be a comic book Luddite for as long as humanly possible until they stop printing them.
Yeah, I really love my Kindle. I love reading on the Kindle. It's easy, especially in bed. But like, I will like a book. I like a physical paper book. I get the Wall Street Journal delivered in print form. It's amazing that the tech. I was thinking about this the other day. The whole tech revolution, of which you're very familiar. We'll talk about your day job in a moment, but looking back 10 years ago, we thought, all these things are going to die. Broadcast will go away. You work for the Washington Times, physical print newspaper. Like we thought all this stuff was going away. And of course it's been hard hit by the pandemic or by the pandemic of the internet. But a lot of this stuff still remains. It's still here. It's still, there's as many books sold as there was, 10 years ago. Radio is strong. Like, have we kind of reached a plateau in terms of the fall off of all that stuff?
I think we're at the point now where we're starting to redefine the purpose of a lot of this stuff. It used to be that if you want something easily accessible that you don't have to put a battery in, you get a book instead of a Kindle e-reader. Now, what was interesting when I was back in media at the Washington Times, we actually made a majority of our profit from ad solicitations and from the classified section, but we still had very reliable and growing print readership between 2019 and 2020. I think 2019 was actually the best year on record for the Washington Times. And what I learned from many people, especially primarily college students and people who were going for post-grad work between, Georgetown, Washington University, and all the other major colleges in D.C., they would tell me that they would read the newspaper because there were no pop-ups. And I thought that was funny, but like that's a legitimate thing. Like they know that when they pick up their paper and they start actually reading it, it's just them and the text.
Yeah.
And that sounds kind of frivolous to some people, but when I sat back and I listened to it, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, because I was very much the same way. I graduated from Liberty University in 2017, and between my 2 years of undergrad there at 16 and 15 through 17, I had a print subscription to the Wall Street Journal. Now, we needed it for a foreign policy class and the political economy class I was taking. So usually we would reference the articles on the website, but what I found was one of my favorite parts of the day was getting some coffee or grabbing lunch and pulling out the paper and actually reading the commentary section. And what I found was funny was I would go to class and I'd have my paper in my bag or under my arm, and people would ask, "Hey, are you done reading it? Could I have it?" And I'm like, "Sure." Never in a million years did I think I'd get more than one person, especially around my age, asking to have a use newspaper, but yeah. I totally get it now, and I think books have the same function. I think a lot of things do now, and whether they maintain a significant share of the consumer market space. I used to think, if you asked me this probably a few years ago, I would say that they're going to be phased out within the next 10 years. Now I don't think I'll say that. I don't think they're going to be phased out this century. Unless something significant changes. I mean, now they're selling books made out of recyclable goods.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. So I think we're going to continue to redefine the purpose of these things to keep them lasting longer than before. I think we're going to see an upcharge with it, but I don't see them disappearing like I would have probably thought a couple of years ago.
Well, I want to jump back because the point of the path to libertarianism is to talk about somebody's development, and you've had a weird, interesting career in some of the similar ways that I have.
That's such a polite way to put it.
Well, between being an author and being a podcast host, a columnist, working for newspapers, working for Parler, there's all kinds of, and that's why On the Run is such a fun show, is because you don't just stick to politics. You talk about all kinds of different things. Before we jump into your development as a libertarian, tell us about On the Run. What do you do there? What's the show like, and where can people get it?
On the Run was supposed to be a travel show. Funny that I say it now, because as soon as it came out, as soon as I was planning for it, everything was put in lockdown. So for listeners, Chris and I were discussing where the show was kind of going, and I immediately, as soon as Virginia and D.C. and the rest of the East Coast were shutting down, I really had to understand, no one's going to listen to travel because there's nowhere to freaking travel to.
Right.
So I quickly had to refocus it, and I started really asking, what is the point of traveling? What is the journey? What is the discovery? And ultimately, On the Run is a culmination of every project, everything I've ever done in the past decade or so. It's everything I've done in and out of politics, because ultimately I think I've had the luck, or in some cases the misfortune, of casting myself as a millennial Forrest Gump. I've done a lot of things. I've met a lot of people. I've had a lot of crazy opportunities. So the focus of On the Run is discovering the wider world around you through different people, through different means of, looking at the world around you and how you can find your place on Earth and your place in the grander universe, and also just having a lot of damn fun, because ultimately it's a show about the travel of life, the focus of life. I do everything from talking to people that work at morgues, to talking to elected officials about Stoic philosophy, to talking with anybody and everything in between, because I think we get so caught up in the box mentality. You know, we're just looking at one screen, so that way we could take our time and go look at another screen, and we're constantly be told who we are and what we believe and where we should keep our focus, that we ignore this amazing world around us. So On the Run came from the mentality of, listen, we got to be on the run from everyone else that's telling us what to do, and we got to think for ourselves and explore that. And, you know, by having really what I deem as a non-political show on a political network, it refocuses people, because the world is a big place. It's an incredibly big place. And the fault that I had as a young adult was thinking that, one, not only did everything revolve around me, but that my world was super small and I was incapable of escaping it. So really it's trying to just rediscover that part of life. And ultimately what I do also is I throw in, strategies, lectures, and other stuff that I do. I've worked with clients, from politics to nonprofits and everything else, to basically help people achieve more freedom. This week we had an episode, well, I don't know when this is coming out, but recently we had an episode called Why Should You Blog on Medium versus Substack? How to build a campaign, whether you're running for dog catcher or governor in 24 hours, how to start a side hustle. It's trying to understand what are the things that can help you achieve more options and more freedom in your life. So by exploring the world around you, by developing the skills that you can learn to go ahead and expand your options, I think On the Run has a little bit of everything for everyone, and I've had one hell of a time doing it.
Yeah, like my favorite one was about being a freelance journalist. You know, that one really spoke to me, but there's all kinds of... The other one that I loved was the story of a drunken escapade about stealing Alexander Hamilton's pistol. That
was one of the most wild interviews I've ever done in my life.
Wide-ranging interview. It's really, really interesting. So it's like a fun variety show that you never know what you're going to get week to week. Like if you were to recommend one episode to start with, or your personal favorite, where would you recommend people dive in?
Oh, I mean, and I think this is fun for libertarians and non-libertarians alike. I just like to have a good time. I have a segment of the show called The Degenerate Panel, where I bring in my friends, Sean, Zed, and Derek. I've known them since I was like 12 years old, and we basically look at areas of pop culture that shaped who we are as millennials. And I think one of our favorite episodes was Degenerate Theater, looking at movies that are so bad they're actually good.
Right.
And, you know, people often think, you know, everything has to be somewhat politically tilted. I'm pretty sure that among my friends, I'm actually the only libertarian or self-identifying libertarian on the panel. But the purpose is to remember the things that we enjoy and remember that there's beauty to the world around us. And, you know, we're movie nerds, we're gamers, we're comic book nerds. Getting to experience that together, and for 2 hours on a Thursday night, get to share that with you. I think that's an episode. It's one of my best performing episodes. But I mean, people like being able to just jump back and remember the things that are just genuinely funny without an agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump back to Baby Remso. You were on a We Are Libertarians episode and talked a lot about your background, and that was this summer. Go check that out. But I wish I knew the episode number. But you know, have you always been political? Have you always been a libertarian? Like, what was your family of origin like? Like, when it came to your passion for politics, was that something that your family was into, or did you come by it on your own?
It was something that I kind of got folded into, and I got a pitch, or else it'd be terrible. Like, I cover all this in my first book, Stay Away from the Libertarians. It's a comedic history of the modern libertarian movement post Ron Paul. And, ultimately it starts with this. Like, I didn't like people telling me what to do in school, whether they were teachers or other students. And it got to the point where I realized that politics wasn't just becoming something that was of interest to me. It was becoming the general pop culture. I mean, Barack Obama, love him or hate him, he was a pop culture president in the way that Bill Clinton was, in the way that, and people might disagree with me on this, I think Richard Nixon was. And I think it really goes back to Teddy Roosevelt, who was the first one to bring reporters into the White House. And, it was that fusion of like this postmodern progressive ideology that really began to show me that, you know, we talk about free expression, we talk about, free speech and all this other stuff, but I felt like the academic institutions around me were becoming more and more restrictive. And I had a kind of a strange upbringing. I was homeschooled, public schooled, and private schooled off and on. Like, it just depended where we were. I come from an active military family. I moved to Australia right when the invasion of Iraq occurred in 2003. And ironically, Saddam Hussein was captured on my birthday. So I always, I get to share that with history. But, I had kids that would repeat what their parents were saying. And this isn't in the book. I actually think this is the first time I bring it up. But, kids are mean. And suddenly, it's like, hey, George Bush is invading Iraq. What the hell is wrong with you? And I'm like, I don't even know who George Bush is. I was like 7 at the time. So, when I came back to the United States in 2005, it was just starting to get to that point now where, everything on TV is just going after George Bush. And my family, pretty cut and dry Republicans. We just kind of watch it and we're just like, well, there's more to life than this. And then, when I moved to Virginia in 2007, right around the time that Barack Obama was the Democrat nominee, it just came to a point where things were just getting really weird. And flash forward to 2012, I'm in an AP government class, and we're given extra credit if we work on a campaign, any campaign. And, at this point, I'm watching Tea Party rallies literally outside of my door. We went to Glenn Beck's rally to restore honor. At this point, I'm starting to see, there's something going on in the country, and I feel this fervor to be part of it. But then, at this point, I'm like, okay, I'll go volunteer for Mitt Romney because I genuinely believe in some of this stuff, and I also want the class credit. I start really assessing, who am I? What do I really believe? And I start looking at Mitt Romney, and I'm like, this guy's a white Obama. What the hell? So before I could knock on a single door or make a single phone call, I just ghosted. I don't end up getting the extra credit or anything. And after that, the world just got weird. I ended up running for president of our school's Young Republican Club. It had 60 members, and I lost by 3 votes. And the guy who won was the secretary of the Young Democrats. And the overall consensus was we need to be more liberal because obviously conservatism and everything has been repudiated. So I do what any, teen with an existential crisis does at that point. I start Googling things. I start
enjoying the libertarian movement. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I'm seeing all these guys like Rothbard and Mises, and I'm like, who are all these Australian dudes? I didn't even know what Austria was. I was that dumb. And, at that point I start learning about Thomas Massey, Justin Amash, all this other stuff. And then what I realized was it's like, I'm kind of in the minority on a lot of these things with a lot of different people. I should just let it take its course. And at that point, I go off to college, join Students for Liberty, get to meet all the fabulous furry freak brothers there. Loved it. Was a campus coordinator. Got an internship at FreedomWorks. Stayed on as a education reform researcher for a little bit, blogging about that stuff. And life just went in 20 million different directions. I was a campaign consultant. I staffed and consulted for libertarian candidates, independent candidates, Republicans. I did journalism for a bit, jumped around between that and media, started a podcast called The Remso Republic. And, part of my podcasting journey came from listening to We Are Libertarians when I was a freshman in college in Alabama. And I would drive from the small town of Marion, where the military school was, that I went to Tuscaloosa, which was 2.5 hours away. And you had a show about libertarianism that was about 2.5 hours long. So between that and Lions for Liberty, I had a lot of free time on my hands. Yeah. But ultimately, where life has taken me now, it's gotten to the point where my passions and my professions are almost one and the same.
Yeah.
And that comes with a lot of pros and that comes with a lot of cons. But ultimately, we have a choice. And I don't think there's a wrong choice for people. But we have to ultimately determine where are we going to spend our time and energy. Because if we're going to spend enough time being angry about something, we might as well try and be the solutions to it. So I'm at the point now where I've done a lot of things. I've messed up a little bit of many other things, and on the run, and everything else I do is really, really just a whole hodgepodge of all of that.
Yeah, you have a wide and varied set of interests, and you and I feel, are kind of the most kindred spirits in the whole libertarian movement. I've known Mark Claire the longest. I'd consider him probably my best libertarian podcast buddy, other than the people on my own network.
Mark Claire and Johnny Adams, they taught me how to podcast.
Yeah. I was
they
thinking
taught me, buy this microphone, go on here, do this, don't do that. It was, they really took me under their wing.
And I was thinking about Johnny's show last night. I don't know if he's still producing a podcast. I hope he is, because the launch pad, or what, Johnny Rocket, what was it called before the launch pad?
Johnny Rocket Launchpad, yeah.
Yeah, that was the best produced podcast, bar none, I've ever heard. Best libertarian podcast. That period was such a fun period. We are libertarians. I always joke. We didn't have a lot of facts. We didn't have a lot of information, but we had a lot of gut feelings and jokes. And I've sort of grown up a little bit since then and changed things. And part of the name change is to do a little bit sort of like what you're doing, where you get to a point where you want to talk about things. Like, I'm still going to talk about libertarianism, but you want to talk about other things and how this, because, for me, so much of the early days of We Are Libertarians was about all the stuff that I didn't like about government. And I feel like that's a very, common thing for new libertarians. They don't like government. This doesn't work because this government, it's a lot of change, but we don't have a lot of hope. And what are the institutions, the big private institutions that are going to make a society function and operate? And I feel like you and I kind of hit that pivot around the same time, where we're going, all right, we get what we don't like, but who is talking about what we don't want to do, or what we want to do as a society, and how you function in healthy relationships with other people? Like, how are we going to make society work in this day and time? What kind of led you to that pivot where you kind of said, all right, I want to talk about just more than just the libertarian philosophy stuff? What were some of those catalysts?
I went through a really hard time in 2016 through 2018 primarily. I had a head injury, which got me.
Okay. Well, that totally.
Yeah, you have to have something wrong with you to go through this. But I was dealing with a lot of personal stuff. I was losing campaigns. I was one of the first people to get kind of corralled up in young voices. And because I wasn't contributing, because I was just barely trying to graduate, I got removed from that because I just wasn't doing anything. For a good year, I didn't publish anything because I couldn't physically, mentally do it. I keep trying to jump into campaigns and activism, and I got to the point where it's like I'm trying to do things that I think are going to repair my life overnight. And I think if you're thinking that you have to end the Fed and bring every soldier home from overseas, and that's going to go ahead and drastically change your well-being and everything overnight, you're kind of missing the forest for the trees, really. And at that point, I'm broke, I'm flat on my ass. I can't I can't find work. It was difficult. I really had to ask myself, it's like, what am I doing? And I knew what I was doing. I know I'm good at digital marketing. I know I'm good at planning. I know I can do a lot of these things, and people saw that. But ultimately, I'm not happy with it, even when things do go well. And why is that? It's because I forgot to ask myself, what do I want to get out of this? And ultimately, it gets to the point where you really have to ask yourself, what are you doing, and why are you doing it? Because when the why became all these big things that not one person can handle, I really had to take it down to a macro level. I want to be successful so I could take care of myself. I want to be able to take care of myself so I can take care of others. I want to take care of others so that way I can spread, good feelings amongst the people within my immediate vicinity. So, because, life is difficult, and I genuinely believe that happiness is a choice. So, I'm not a libertarian because I love talking about economic theory and everything. And I used to write white papers for fun. I could go toe to toe with the best of them, and I have. But ultimately, it came down to, if I'm not doing this with the end goal of actually achieving tangible results in my life, then it's not worth it. And, I tell people, On the Run is not a show for everybody. Because if you want politics and you just want commentary, there are other shows for that. I call this like the advanced level course. Like, you already have the understanding, but what do you actually want to do? Because if you're not having more fun in your life, if you're not happier in your life, if you're not achieving more levels of actual individual autonomy and freedom and choice in your life, it doesn't matter how many times you lecture people or how many times you go about voting or getting petitions for something. The real change starts with you, and that sounds corny, but ultimately I think that I'm a testament to that, because I've been able to do all the things I want to do for myself and for what I feel is for the broader liberty movement. But I've done it while at the same time achieving a lot. And it might not seem like a lot because it's not bringing down entire bad institutions and stuff like that, but it's a lot for me, and it's a lot for my friends, and it's a lot for my family, and it's a lot for my listeners. And I feel that when we refocus on just what is good about life itself, it makes everything big and scary seem less like that, and it makes big challenges and bigger dreams seem more attainable.
Yeah, I think that somewhere along the way I realized that libertarianism is not in and of itself the identity. And I think that's why a lot of people get really bent out of shape, and there's almost like a cult around libertarianism. There is a lot of cults around personalities in the movement, and every political movement has that because people are so bereft of meaning at the moment that they're looking for any sense of community, and politics is really a great way to latch onto that. But I love the libertarian philosophy because it helped lay those foundations for my own self-actualization. The individual responsibility that it teaches, If we didn't have these things, then you're going to have to do these things for this all to work, for you to work, for your community to work. I think it's a really powerful first step for somebody, and maybe that's why a lot of young guys who kind of feel out of control are attracted to libertarianism initially, because it gives them a sense of that individual responsibilities that they're craving, that they're looking for, and it's I don't know.
I don't know how you feel about this, but I genuinely believe that a person's political identity is the least interesting thing about them.
Oh, 100%. But I think that is often what a lot of people lead with, because politics has become a form of entertainment, has become pro wrestling. It's acceptable to walk around as MAGA or libertarian or an Obama supporter or whatever. Whereas if you're walking around going, I am the world's biggest fan of Triple H. I think with a lack of common things to talk about, politics has sort of become the weather in the 1800s, where people talk about the weather because they were farmers. It's become almost a social lubricant, and sometimes a friction too, where people find like-minded people and build community around politics. But it can't, it can't be the total summation of your person, your identity, your life. And that's what I think I really like about your show, and kind of watching you from the Remso Republic days, kind of finding your own voice and finding your own way, and kind of saying liberty's a tool for us all to reach, this what we really want to do. I look at you writing books, writing 2 books, working at the Washington Times, now with Parler. I've watched you kind of grow up into somebody that is, maybe you haven't articulated or fully understood your dream yet, but you have put together a career where you're trying to achieve your goal, whatever that may be. Do you have a clear idea? For me, I've always wanted to be a talk radio show host. That's been the long march from working at radio stations to working in media to working in political campaigns. That's been my march to where I want to be and what I want to do for a living. Do you have a central thing that you're I'm going to do this and this and this to achieve this thing? Or are you just sort of the dude that's this is fun, now I'm going to go do this other fun thing, and kind of have just tripped into being good at these certain things?
I was kind of like that until I realized I had bigger bills to pay. Then I was like, I gotta probably become more reliable. But I bring this up, and this is one of the overarching themes for On the Run. This is really kind of like my recorded journey of my path to financial independence. I truly believe that one of the reasons why libertarians aren't more influential is because we're not fun to be around and we're broke.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to be around broke, unfunny people. And I get a lot of shit for that, but I'll say it until the day I die. And my biggest thing is, I want to be in a system where I have the most amount of options in my life. They could be all bad options. They could be all good options, but I want the final choice to be my choice because I had all options available. So it's my goal right now, through learning new skills, through developing, side gigs and consulting, which I do, by, growing my overall, human capital, and by creating residual forms of income. I want to be basically retired by the age of 40. I think between the age of 35 and 40, I can actually be semi-retired. And when people hear early retirement or semi-retired, they think it just means, sitting on the beach and not working again. No, I actually like working. I don't do the podcast. I don't do my newsletter. I don't do all this stuff because it's made me a millionaire secretly, folks. Like, it hasn't. But, it's all helping me achieve those things. People buy my books. People get my affiliate links. People come to me for consulting because I'm giving them good, free, valuable stuff, and it's helping me grow that. So by being able to reach the point in my life where I can have enough of that to just cover the basics, so that way I keep the lights on, food on the table, and, live a, just an earnest life, I can go on and I can do other things. Like, everything I do has to do with trying to make a part of the world, at least from my view, a better place. I don't talk about it often, but, I love this time of year because I usually have a pot of cash, and I do a lot of donations to charities. Samaritan's Purse is a big charity I really love. I donate to Free the People. I donate to, the Gary Sinise Foundation. If I could spend my entire life just, trying to help out charities, either through just donations or trying to find other ways to bring them in more attention, more of what they need to get things done, I think that would be beautiful. But, right now the big focus is get myself to the point, work myself to the bone while I'm young and while I'm capable, so that way I can spend the rest of my life doing what it is I love. And I think that, it will constantly change because as people, we change. When I was 18, I thought I wanted to be an economist, working for a think tank. And then at one point I was, working at GameStop, and I was like, I'm just happy to be working. I think I need to give myself the freedom to have those choices and the freedom to do things that will fail and things that will succeed. But I'm not going to do it, having to work a full-time 40-hour job well into my 60s.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, what are some of the ways that you are working on that goal of being financially independent?
So I'm a big acolyte of the Dave Ramsey school of thought. He has the 7 baby steps, and immediately the big thing was debt. I got my debt in control. I don't have debt right now. I unless something crazy happens, I'm pretty good. I've got my emergency fund. Dave Ramsey says 3 to 6 months. I've actually got an emergency fund for about a year, and I keep putting into that. I follow the 15% investment rule. I've got a well-diversified portfolio in different categories. So I'm doing all the things that I need to do with my money, but that's just what I'm trying to achieve through my earned income. I write books, and I tell people don't get into writing books if you want to become a millionaire, especially if you self-publish. But every month I get a pretty good check in the mail from that. And whether I'm going to put that towards gas or, taking my girlfriend out on a nice meal, or I'm going to throw that into my Roth IRA or something, that's money that I made and I didn't have to do anything for it. Because, it gets to the point where you can only do so much promotion for your own books. But I'm still getting a paycheck from that. And, I've got my old show, I've got ads running on still, so I get money from Anchor for the Remso Martinez experience, Remso Republic. I still do consulting, so I do a lot of nonprofit, new media, and political consulting for people. And, I'm at the point now where I don't really need it. so I could be more selective about the people I have, because one, I want to make sure they pay on time, because a lot of people are just cheap as shit. And two, I want to make sure that if they're going to do it, they're not just going to waste my time and fight with me on it. It's like, if you're going to come to me, I want to make sure that you're actually going to learn and you're going to benefit and you're going to succeed and make money off of it. So I do consulting for that. And, what I also do recently is I've been helping people start side gigs. I recorded an episode that's going to be coming out in the near future called 8 Steps to Building a Side Gig, because I was inspired by one of my friends who listened to my show and got inspired by that. And now what he's doing is he's building computers from scratch and marketing them on Facebook Marketplace to parents who have kids that want to play Fortnite, but they don't want to spend money on a giant new computer. And I'm like, that's awesome. Let's teach you how to maximize that. So it's a mix of, expanding my earned income from my day job, building residual streams of income through books, through other shows, through affiliate links, through anything that I can earn genuinely passively without having to put too much effort in, and then having the occasional side gig that brings in, $200 to $500 at minimum a month. It might not sound like a lot, but if I could put that directly into investment or directly into savings or buying a class or something else, like, all I'm doing is I'm just growing myself. So it's trying to achieve all those different things, earned, passive, and then side income, trying to just keep that together, spend as little as possible, and then use it in the right places. I should be able to build up enough capital and enough regular streams, so that way by at least 35 or 40 I can just say I quit, and I know I'm still going to get money coming in.
I think people listen to that and they go, well, man, that just sounds like a lot of work. I'm going to have to give up a lot of stuff. I'm going to have to eat rice and beans every day. I'm going to have to work really hard. Like, is that the truth? Like, are you tired all the time, or is it harder? Like, because I think if you're 19-year-old Remso listening to that, you go, man, I could never do that. But when you're, I don't know how old you are, like late 20s Remso?
I'm turning 26 in a week.
All right, 26 Remso, you're like, I'm having a blast. This is a breeze. Like, what would you say to the person that listens to that and goes, man, that's a lot?
I will cover this in two parts. One, everything you said is entirely true. It's difficult. I'm just going to be straight with you. It's not easy. It's not always fun. And I did a lot of things to try and figure out what worked for me that failed. And I think people need to understand that. I failed at a lot more things than I have been successful at. I tried to do documentaries. Some of my documentaries did well. The first documentary I tried to do it with Ford Fisher. I had an Indiegogo and everything. It failed. It was embarrassing. I tried to do other podcasts about super niche areas. Those failed. I failed at a lot of things. And I don't find that to be too disappointing, because I've learned from them each time. I tried to do an online course, and that failed. What I had to understand was two things. One, what is the purpose? I can't just do this because I want to do it. And I mentioned this in the 8 Steps to Building a Side Hustle episode. Like, the worst time to create a side gig is when you're unemployed. Because at that point, that's money that, you're setting up for when you do find a job. You've already got your side gig established, but I think that's like ass backwards thinking. You should be focusing on getting a job. So, it's understanding why. And the thing is, I have my base through my day job, because your biggest builder of wealth will be your salaried earned income. That's just a fact. But I have all this other stuff because the goal is to not be doing this well into my 60s. I don't want to be old. I don't want to be injured. I brought up I had a head injury, for a while. I still deal with the repercussions of that. I've got dementia that runs in my family. I don't know if I'm still going to be in my mental facilities well into my 60s. That's scary. I'm scared of very few things, Chris. I'm scared of actually very few things because I've dealt with a lot. And the one thing that actually scares me more than anything else is living long but not being able to live, because my mind has betrayed me. So I want to make sure I can capitalize on all the time I have. So that is my goal. That is why I work so hard now, so that I can work like no one else, so I can live like no one else. And secondly, in terms of the things that I've been able to do, it's threefold. There are things I'm naturally talented in. There are things that I see an immediate market demand for that, don't cost much time or energy. And 3, they're things I have fun doing. Podcasting, I tell people I don't do paid advertisers anymore, but I have affiliate links. All the affiliate links that you see in the episodes of On the Run are things that I actually use. I use Cash App on a daily basis. I use Robinhood myself. I use Dosh. I use all these things. So I want to share with you the things that I'm using. And the only way I benefit from it is if you use it. And if you don't like it, it didn't cost you anything.
Right.
So, that's one thing. So I try and do it with the things I love. Podcasting is one of them. Writing books is another one of them. I do consulting for, campaigns. I consulted for a winning campaign this past general election for a state house delegate in West Virginia. So, I do the things that I have experience in, that I enjoy, that I have a bit more of a degree of talent in than most people. And, I tell people, I think copywriting is probably one of the easiest side hustles you can get. If you can write good ad copy, you will never go hungry. I deal with many, many journalists who think that writing sales copy is beneath them. But let me tell you, when I was at the Washington Times, I wrote copy for people in Malaysia who do Botox, a Taiwanese family who owned a day spa in Ohio, and for people creating educational toys for children. And it brought in good money, and it didn't cost me too much time or energy. So it's just trying to find the things that work for you, the things that you can do regularly, and it doesn't feel like a burden. And ultimately, that the time you're putting into it is bringing enough money later that you can use to help better yourself. Because I think we have as Americans uniquely, and I don't like to America bash by a lot of people. I think regardless, I don't know when libertarianism turned into anti-Americanism. That's just my opinion. But I think we live in the greatest country in the world. I'm proud to be an American. I wouldn't sell my citizenship for anything. I love this country, good, bad, and indifferent. But I think Americans have an extremely distorted sense of their relationship with their money, because we're consumers. For every dollar that we make today, we're spending $1.50. And we're usually putting on credit cards, and we're just going to keep paying the minimum balance, and we're never going to have this going. The debtor is owned by he who controls the debt. We complain about banks all the time, but most people who are libertarians complaining about the banking system are owned by the banks, and vice versa. They're owned by the people that are giving them the loans. So why would I want to do that? So it's trying to basically achieve those things so that way we can make our money work for us. Because if we don't know how to properly manage our money and to make our money buy us back our own time, it's just wasted.
And I need to go pay my credit cards off. You got me inspired here. No, I think, and that's it's such a great point. And I've seen Roger Paxton, who was on the Lava Flow. I knew Roger in the LP, and then he became a podcaster and kind of was done with the LP, and now he's done with podcasting because he's got his own self-sustaining farm. He's like, the point of liberty, I think, and everybody kind of goes through this cycle. When you're first into libertarianism or you're younger, you think you can change so many things. You can change the whole world. But at a certain point, you kind of go, at 37, I can barely change myself, and I can only create generational wealth or something that is slightly beyond my person to impact society. And self-sustainability for an individual and their family is such an important part of freedom. And I really think that Dave Ramsey, for instance, is one of the most transformational Americans. His impact is so felt, but not totally understood. When we're in the middle of this recession and all these job losses, and the markets and the economy all kind of seem okay, and everybody kind of goes, yeah, they're printing a lot of money. But man, I bet there's something, and I'm just thinking of this as you're talking, about the amount of people that have spent 20 years preparing for this moment because they have 3 to 6 months, and so it doesn't matter what the markets are doing. It doesn't matter.
Your average American for the past 3 years has had less than $100 in emergency savings.
Yeah.
I think it's 1 out of 3 Americans has more than $1,000 in emergency savings.
Would you say
that is terrifying?
Yeah, it makes you subservient to to all kinds of different people. So love your message of freedom and independence. But you talked about writing, and I think that is one of the most underappreciated skills that more people need to focus on. Becoming a better writer has made me a better podcaster, a better employee, it's made me more money. Learning writing in my high school newspaper was the best thing that ever happened to me. Can you talk about your writing career and how important has learning the craft of writing been to your success?
Writing is the only reason why I think I've been able to receive a single degree of success, because I'm not naturally talented at anything else. I call myself a pretty C-average American when it comes to most things. I was just happy that I graduated college and they don't put your GPA on diplomas. So let's put it that way. But what I learned very early on was that being an effective communicator is one of the few things that will actually help you get out of situations that you wouldn't otherwise get out of. Whether it's writing an appeal because your principal is mad at you, or writing an essay why you deserve extra credit, or writing an apology letter to somebody. There's something unique about the written word and being able to speak with people, which is key. And, not many people know this. I had a speech impediment as a kid. I got my Rth messed up, which is why, when you call yourself Remso, it sounds kind of odd. So, I had a speech impediment as a kid, and, I had to work on how I spoke and everything else. And, with writing, that was just one of the things that I enjoyed because I liked reading. I liked comic books. As a kid, I think I wanted to be a comic book writer. And you still have to write the scripts to give the artist. So if you don't write a detailed script, the artist is kind of screwed because then they have to do more guesswork. But with writing, I got my start in writing in my freshman. It was my sophomore year of college. Austin Peterson needed copywriters, and Austin he was just at the Libertarian Republic at the time before he got his radio show. So I just said, I like talking about liberty and stuff, and I want a chance to write, and I don't know where else. So I started doing that. Started doing copywriting. Started doing editing. From there, I went to Freedom Works, where they were hard on the people that would write for the Freedom Works blog. And luckily, a very good friend and a mentor, Logan Albright, who actually wrote the foreword for my first book. I call Logan the man that helped me graduate from college because he proofread and edited my thesis paper on a political economy, the feasibility of the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Partnership. Yeah, that was fun. He made me a better writer because he's like, listen, man, if you could do this, you will be fine at everything else. Get good at the hard stuff, and the easy stuff will just be so easy. And I started writing freelance because I wanted to just be a straight journalist for a little while. Did a sting at MRC, wrote for a few other places. I was a copywriter for Jason Stapleton for a little bit, and just whenever I needed work, whenever I had a project, whenever I needed money, I just knew I'm good at writing. So whether I'm doing research, whether I'm doing a fun listicle, whether I'm doing an investigative piece, I've done investigative journalism. Writing always came as a knack for me, and I say this, and I do genuinely mean this. You don't have to be incredibly smart to be a good writer. You just have to know how to put words together and how to make an argument and cite your case. There was a sting where I had a lot of very labor-intensive jobs. I was a mall cop. I was a GameStop employee. I sold makeup door to door, lots of lifting. It was bad for my head, bad for my neck. It just sucked, and I basically quit all that. And for 6 months, I was writing at the Advocates for Self-Government. I was getting paid to do that, but I was also writing sales copy. I made more money from sales copy than I ever did from any of those jobs combined, and I did it from home in my air-conditioned, safe environment where I didn't have to lift anything. And it just got to the point where I realized that, I had a natural talent towards this skill, but what really impresses me are the people who identify as writers who are not naturally talented, but who became good because they respected the craft. And I tell people this all the time, and this has been statistically proven through Entrepreneur.com and GQ and a bunch of other places. Copywriting is one of the most in-demand side gigs in the world. And if you can be good at copywriting, there's not just a local market, there's a global market. Fiverr.com is amazing. That's how I had international clients. I wrote an entire website copy for a business in Mexico that built websites for other businesses. I wrote sales copies for clinics in Malaysia. I wrote sales copy for charter schools in Canada. I wrote sales copy for day spas in Ohio. There's an abundance of work, and there's an abundance of opportunities. There's a deficit of writers. So when I tell people, especially journalists, because they're like, well, it's beneath me, I don't know if I can do it. It's like, if you can write hard op-eds and hard investigative pieces, writing good sales copy just takes a little bit of time and effort and practice. But, yeah. I mean, writing itself, I think for a lot of people, it's not just something that's good for marketing purposes and for self-development purposes. There's something different about actually writing your thoughts on paper. And I don't journal as often, but, this bugs the shit out of my publicist. But, like, I have legal pads everywhere. Whether I'm just doodling or I'm just writing down random thoughts, I still use legal pads for everything. I'm a hoarder when it comes to that. I've got legal pads from years ago I refuse to get rid of, because there's something about actually putting ink to paper that's a much more intimate and personal experience than just typing. And I don't like typing on Word or on Google Docs necessarily, because it's too easy to let things go, and it's too easy to backspace and to hit autocorrect on this other stuff. I don't think I have it here, but I've got actually just a basic word processor attached to a keyboard and an old e-ink screen.
Oh, I'm so jealous. It's
called the FreeWrite. It was like $500. I called it my money making machine, because I actually, I did deferred payments for that because I wasn't really working at the time, so I had to do monthly payments for it. But I paid it off in like a month because it was such a distraction-free utility. Yeah. It doesn't have autocorrect. It doesn't have anything. It's just write, bitch, write. And that thing made me so much freaking money.
I want one of those so bad, because I'm so ADD, and like, you sit down to write and you get pulled, your brain gets pulled to the phone, because you're like, somebody probably tweeted at me and I need to look at that. Yeah. That distraction-free writing process. So you've worked, for great people like AP and Stapleton, and now you're sort of in a role where you mentioned your publicist, and you're hiring people, you're bringing people on. First, let's brag about the great Chloe Anagnos. We'll give her a plug. But also, how do you make that shift where you're now bringing on people you're the Jason Stapleton that's hiring people to do copywriting? Like, how'd you get to that point, and how do you obviously, now that you've got these different streams, you can afford it, but I mean, how do you make that shift, and what do you have them do, and how does that impact your work?
And I want to preface this. I'm not rich. I'm not.
No, I think you are. I see a Spider-Man.
I'm rich in spirit.
I see a Spider-Man poster without a frame in the background. I didn't think that you were rich.
I do want to give a shout out to my publicist Chloe Anagnos from Argo Strategy. Whether you're looking for social media, digital marketing, editing, or just general consulting and management, I've worked with Chloe for many, 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 many years, and she's always been awesome. She did a lot for my last book that came out, How to Succeed in Politics and Other Forms of Devil Worship. And when it got to the point where I was just losing time in the day, I realized I needed somebody to help me manage a lot of my personal projects outside of work, because I just don't have the time for it. And my biggest problem right now is sleeping. It got to the point where I realized I need somebody, not because I just want to burn the money, but because I need somebody to help me get back my own time. So dropping X amount of dollars towards a publicist to help me do my marketing, my socials, and help me, do bookings and other stuff for the show, it's going to help me free up my own time. So at least maybe I can go to the gym. Maybe I can get a few hours extra sleep. Maybe I can work on another project that I've been postponing. And ultimately, I feel comfortable with it, because ultimately money is just permission to take back your own time. And, I'm lucky that I have this reliable, steady income coming in, not just through my earned salary, but through all these other streams that I can put it towards that, because it's a great investment. And if you're doing it right, you're focusing on the things that make you money, so you make more money. So then it's like it doesn't even matter. So it works out in that way. And it's in my side hustle episode that's coming out. I mention understands your need for scalability. When your side gig gets to the point where you have to ask yourself to scale, that's a good problem, because whether you're going to bring on more people to be subcontractors, whether you're going to bring on a virtual assistant, or whether or not you just see this as an opportunity to get more picky with your clients, so then you can upsell the current people you have. Understanding what you need to get back your own time so you can be a functioning, regular person who sleeps and who does all the things he needs to do. Don't forget to go to the grocery store, put gas in your car, that type of thing. It's worth it, because the one thing that I have encountered, that everybody encounters, and if you're listening to this and you're an entrepreneur, you know this better than anybody else, it's burnout. If I burn out, I don't burn out for days, Chris. I burn out for months. It's like a Dale Earnhardt crash. It is bad.
I get of all things, I get laryngitis, and it'll last for weeks sometimes. Like, there was a 2-month period where I couldn't talk and couldn't do the show because I go, and you get burned out, and then your body, the second you take a break, your body's like, gotcha, bitch, and gives you a cold. And then, it's really, I think in our culture, you mentioned consumerism, it's so geared towards make more money so you can buy more stuff, and it really just wears you out. It wears you out hard. So
I'm a couponer. Like,
really?
I'm cheap. Like, ultimately, like, it goes back to what I said earlier. You have to have a purpose with it. No, don't work this hard. Don't work this many hours. Don't subcontract. Don't add more projects. Don't do any of this stuff without an intention.
Yeah.
And the intention is twofold. I do all this stuff because I have fun doing it. I have fun doing it so I can make money off of it. I make money off of it so I could reach my goals of the one thing I want, which is more freedom at an optimal part of my life. So if I didn't have that, which I didn't at certain points, it would just become a disaster. Because, like I mentioned, I failed at a lot more than I've succeeded at. It's just the fact of it. Nothing is worse than when you spend so much time and money into the stuff. And, I made a digital course at one point. I did it in the worst way possible. I had to ask a friend for a loan that I paid a 50% rate of interest because I don't think he thought I could pay it back, which luckily I was able to. I had to take on more work to pay it back because the thing that was going to pay it back failed. But nothing is good when you have to take a loan from a friend at a high interest rate to make something that you put all this time and money and marketing and just energy into, and then it fails. When that happened, I had to go find other work just to pay off the loan.
Yeah.
And, I say to people, what's the reason for it? And the reason that I was trying to do that was because I was like, well, I'm unemployed, I might as well. I should have just been looking for a job. I should have been going to the gym. I should have been resting, meditate. I should have done anything else than put all my time into something that might bring me not that much money during the month.
Yeah, and
so
I think
it's all about the intention.
Yeah, there's I got this nice note from a guy today. He runs Raw Liberty Media. Look him up on Twitter. I'll give him a shout out. And hey, how did you get, he asked, how did you get affiliate with the We Are Libertarians people? And I said, I just replied, I created it. And he's like, oh, I had no idea. I'm just new to all this. And it's such and people always ask me, how do you get to the point where Remso and I are at? Just start. Start with a thing, set up a Twitter, like Raw Liberty Media, set up a Twitter, then add on a podcast, then add on a website, make a bunch of mistakes, and eventually you'll get to a point where you've got something. I mean, consistency is key. That's really, really important. And just try a bunch of stuff. If you're a young man or woman listening to this and you want to get into working for liberty, then just start something. Get involved in a campaign. Send somebody a note and say, hey, I'd like to work for you. And see what shakes out.
I cold called so many people.
Yeah.
It's law of averages. That's the more people you reach out to, even if you're not necessarily the shiniest turd in the turd bowl, you're going to get a response back and someone's going to give you a chance. I've seen it myself. I've seen it from other people that aren't that bright. They just know how to go ahead and sell themselves to enough people and somebody will pick them up.
And the more giggy all this gets, where everybody's working gigs, everybody's more willing to help each other out. And I just say, if you're a creator, share other people's content the way you'd like your content shared. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I bring on Remso and bring on Brian Nichols, and I try to use my clout to lend it to them to help them get to where they're at, because guys like Brian,
I thought I was lending you mine, Chris.
Oh, that's part of it. But that's part of it too. Like you bring an audience from people that you've built, and they go, oh, well, what is We Are Libertarians? It's about working together, and saying like, hey, I've got this thing, go check out their thing. Then it goes both ways, and then it octopuses out. So I mean,
and I mean that's what I love about this network, because there's a show for everybody, and it's never the same. And people just double down on what they're good at. And We Are Libertarians. I remember when the Blaze and CRTV merged, I had friends that were part of that. Some got promotions, some lost jobs. It's just how it is. But everyone was like, okay, well, that's how it is for the conservatives. What about the libertarians? And at the time, for my old show, I did an episode basically saying, like, listen, there's got to be a mechanism for creative destruction that builds people up, and not just tries to tear down other efforts. And with We Are Libertarians, I've had more fun podcasting here with this listenership, with this audience, with these other amazing hosts than ever before, because everyone is dedicated towards creating good, genuine content and building each other up, because a rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah, everybody's a worker. It's great. I want to end on Parler, because you've got this amazing job at Parler now. We didn't even get to the Washington Times. I had a bunch of journalism questions, but I'll ask you those later.
We can speed through them real fast.
Well, I mean, what is it like to work at a newspaper? I mean, the Washington Times is different in that it is a conservative-leaning newspaper. It's created to be so, really. But it was created to be counterbalance to the Post. But it's still journalism nonetheless. It's still a newspaper. There has, on the day that the CNN tapes are about to be released tonight, and James O'Keefe is going to
I am watering at the mouth.
I personally will be shocked to find out if CNN employees like Joe Biden more than Donald Trump. This major revelation. What's it like to work in a newsroom? What's journalism like as a career?
I was lucky. I started as a freelance journalist, working for a couple different places, getting to understand what it was like working with an editor you were never in an office with. And then when I was at the Times, I was the social media coordinator, but I also did a lot of commentary as well. It was the best newsroom I've ever worked in. I actually genuinely think it's the best newsroom in America, because they kept their news and their commentary so separate. You rarely ever saw a columnist talking to a regular reporter. And at the end of the day, the reporters I worked with there were some of the best reporters, I think, in the business, because they just did the work. And often in journalism, in the age of the internet and news deserts and everything else, it's often really hard to get rewarded for putting the amount of effort you put into things. But, I worked with editors that were Democrats. I worked with reporters that were politically apathetic. Here I am. I came from Media Research Center at one point. One of our best Metro reporters worked for Media Matters. We were all there because we genuinely loved the news and the commentary we were doing. It wasn't just, drive-by hit pieces. It was actually good, thoughtful commentary pieces that people began to, develop a relationship with. So, working in a newsroom was great because it forced me to work with different types of people I probably would have never worked with. It gave me a 24/7 work ethic that you will never get. And to have done that, I think I was 24 when I started, to be so young and be in charge of the virtual presence of an entire news company, it was a great responsibility that I never went a day by without being grateful for. That job was the changing point in my life, really. So, ultimately, get out of your comfort zone, work with people you wouldn't typically work with, grind like hell and earn their respect, and just do what you're good at doing, which is providing great news and commentary and giving people what they want. And you will always end up on top.
My sense of, working around journalists and, having been in newsrooms, it isn't that everybody sits down and, whatever we selectively find out about the CNN dump, I don't believe that journalists sit down and go, well, let's find this angle. It's more like a group thinky thing. I doubt that the people at the Washington Times sit here and go, get me a story on helping that's going to help Trump, but is going to hurt Biden. You know, I don't think that it's ever that kind of explicit. But like when it comes to media bias, be it in either direction, I mean, what were your experiences around journalists as you worked with them?
Well, now in my current role, I really don't like speaking with journalists at all. I really don't. I've worked with some pretty scummy journalists when I was a journalist. But, you know, the thing about the Times, and I got this from one of the editors there in the newsroom, was good or bad, no matter who's president, no matter what war we're in, no matter what is the current trending hot button issue, those will all come and go. But the goal is to have the paper still be here. And the Washington Times is one of those unique organizations where they've had really low periods and they've had really high periods, and they've been able to stick it through each time. Because as long as you're just focused on the heart of the story, as cliche as it sounds, history does look kindly upon that, ultimately. Whether it's a few months or a few years or a decade, I mean, ultimately, if you're just doing your job, you will continue to do it. The journalists I saw that burned out were the people that saw themselves as political operatives. That's not a surprise to some people. The journalists I saw were the ones that burned out, were the ones that were just never in it. Because the problem is you had a lot of commentators pretending to be straight-edge reporters, and you had a lot of straight-edge reporters that wanted to skip the hard work of actual reporting because they wanted to be commentators and talking heads. And it goes back to the intention thing. You know, living a life with intention is important, and it sounds corny, but ultimately, if you lose that intention, you're going to end up not succeeding at that because you've sabotaged yourself from the get-go. So, you know, all the reporters I saw that wanted to be commentators, they ended up doing that, and they flamed out because they were just like everyone else. And all the commentators that wanted to be reporters, you know, it's going to be hard because you're not going to get that interview with that Democrat because you wrote 10 hit pieces on him. It's just a fact. You can't do that. So decide of what you want to do and just be good at it because things come and go. Life moves faster than we think sometimes, whether we want it to or not. But if you just focus on your job, you'll be okay.
So now you work at Parler, which, you know, as I've read in the media, is a right-wing extremist collection of the most hateful people on the
threat to democracy.
A threat to democracy. There is no doubt that there is, you know, a pro-Trump bias when you're on Parler, but that's sort of natural, I would think, with any social network that models itself on free speech. You're going to get people who say, but one thing that I've noticed with Minds and Parler over a period of time is a moderation of the people that start to show up. You know, you go on Minds and Parler, and it's no longer just, you know, like the guy that got kicked off of Twitter for being that guy. It's a lot more. It's a lot more people. How long have you been with Parler? What have you seen just over the last? You know, I think you've been there a few months. It's been quite the growth, I imagine. What's going on at Parler? Give us a glimpse behind the scenes.
So I was a Parler user. I have the little rocket ship badge, early adopter badge, since 2018. And when I was at the Times, I was a Parler client. I built the Washington Times opinion page on there, which almost has 500,000 people. When I left in July of 2020, it had about 350,000 people. And, you know, I've been at Parler as the Outreach Director since July, and ultimately what we want to do is we want to give people an actual social media platform that is what social media was supposed to be, which is a place where people talk. We stay out of their way unless they're breaking the law or something, and we sell ads. Keep it simple. We don't data mine. We're not going ahead and targeting people because of one way or another. We have a diverse company. People that, you know, would probably surprise you. I don't want to get into it, but I mean, we're all bound by the idea that
Al Franken,
you know, this matters.
AOC moonlights.
No,
AOC writes copy for the email newsletters. I was surprised.
No. But I mean, like we've had in just the last couple of months that kind of, you know, that I call it the chill out, as some would say, because we have a whole bunch of calendar models on there now. Because Instagram was saying their stuff was too scandalous. And by today's standards, it's not really. We have athletes now, MMA fighters. We have actors now. We've got, you know, Tulsi Gabbard is on there now. And Tulsi Gabbard, last I checked, is not a Trump person. Because ultimately what people are realizing is that you get rid of the algorithms that prevent people from growing a following and from getting their content seen, and you just treat them like actual human beings. It's amazing what could happen. Because what we're trying to do is just go back to basics. What makes social media great? And why was it good? And where was the problem? And people say we started off as a Trump base. It's because that's where we were in our climate when we started. We had those people here. So, of course, it was going to look like that. But I also like to use an example that Facebook was originally a site where the men at Harvard could go rate the hotness of their female colleagues. And now Mark Zuckerberg is on the Hill teaching old people how to use the internet.
I'd love to see like a feature where we rate the hotness of older MAGA congressmen, like Matt Gaetz versus Rand Paul. Obviously, Matt Gaetz is kind of hotter, but no, I'm just kidding.
His hair, though, I would love his hair. I would love the locks and everything. I'll just run my fingers through it all day.
One of the interesting things is like right as everybody started, right after the election, there's always a weird thing that happens like right after an election is over. There's just always these little fluke things where like after McCain lost, everybody joined the LP because like I did my duty and they lost and they can't get it done. You know, right after Trump lost, I don't know what it was, but everybody was just joining Parler and talking about joining Parler. I imagine that had to be like a crazy couple weeks. Your servers, I'm sure, were hotter than Rand Paul. I mean, what was it like just right after as everybody and their grandma became like a meme in and of itself? Like, okay, Snowflake, go enjoy your safe space at Parler, that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, people said a lot of things, but I mean, ultimately it comes down to this, that we have a product that works, and everyone was seeing how tweets were getting taken down. I spoke with liberal reporters that said I was just doing election coverage, and Twitter took down my stuff because they said it was spreading disinformation from sources that were not claimed. And now she's on Parler because she could do her job as a reporter, and we're not going to do that. Because ultimately, you know, the product works. You know, we're not an editorial. We're not in the business of fact-checking things. The beautiful and terrifying thing about the internet is that it gives you what you want. But that's the thing. It's not going to give you what it wants. It's going to give you what you want. So if you want to go ahead and just focus on this small part of the world that's only going to tell you what you want, you can get that anywhere. But what Parler does is it ensures that you're going to actually have a platform to learn and to engage and to make your own mind on things. We've got reporters from The Intercept on Parler. We've got Robbie Suave from Reason on there. We've got Maj Touré. We've got Free the People. We've got AmericanGreatness.com. We've got Ben Stein. We've got Gina Carano. We've got people because they just want something that's good and treats them fairly. Because the thing is, when you come to Parler and you need help with something, you're going to probably get a real person. When I was at the Times, we were not spending an insignificant amount of money on Facebook and Twitter ads, and if we needed help, it was like
it's impossible.
It just was non-existent.
It's impossible.
So we're trying to remember, we're not this digital rogue nation. We're a business, and if you treat your customers like crap, it's not like they don't have options.
I would spend money on Minds or Parler in a heartbeat over Facebook at this point. I mean, it's I never really got good results with Facebook, and I just don't, having been banned before the 2018 election, like seeing people like Hudak and Joshua Smith and like normal mainstream libertarian people being kicked off of Facebook. I just think, these Facebook groups are every bit the echo chamber that what people say Parler is. I've actually had some good conversations with people. I have better conversations with pro-Trump people on my posts on Parler because they're more open-minded than I do on Facebook, where it's just more built for FUs, And so I got 1.5 million on a post, views on a post that was not pro-Trump. It wasn't really anti-Trump. It was just it was crazy that it happened. So, how do you kind of balance that out and fight that perception? I mean, is it a problem that it's sort of seen as a right-leaning echo chamber, or do you just go, that's how it's seen right now and it'll balance out eventually?
I mean, what I usually see is that the people that are saying that to us, they certainly don't have an account. I mean, people are at the point now where they're just spreading just outright lies that have no factual basis. Because if they actually did their homework and if they were actually intellectually honest, they would see that it's a platform that is just that. It's a platform. They are spreading things that I just find laughable on a daily basis because that's all they have to resort to. Because if there was something that was a significant issue, we'd probably respond to it by now, especially with CNN and, not just American outlets. We have international outlets covering us. This has been one of the most overwhelming periods in my life because as the Outreach Director, I have to speak with everybody. I'll be honest with you, Chris. You're one of the only people that I'm going to probably speak to for the next year or so because I'm incredibly selective about the intention of the people I'm speaking with. I don't really talk with reporters for Parler. We have other folks that do it. I did a webinar last week with the New York Metropolitan Republicans Club. That was really more of an orientation. I'm very selective about what I do now because even with On the Run and stuff, people are trying to, bring me on to talk about the On the Run topics, but turns into something where I'm having to explain the Parler terms and conditions because they know if they can find a gotcha moment with me, they can get some clicks for it. And I've gotten to the point where I just completely cut those people out now. I've had to tell my personal publicist that it's like I'm not going to talk to reporters anymore.
It is sort of like the Jordan Peterson effect. Like, the people who have like Jordan Peterson is an innocuous, harmless knockoff of Joseph Campbell. And like you read about him in the press and he's the most hateful, misogynistic, like, and like if people write that kind of stuff about, let's say like Milo or Gavin McInnes, everybody kind of goes, all right, yeah, I've seen him say some ugly stuff. But, like, once it hits Jordan Peterson, you're like, that doesn't compute. That doesn't seem like this kind of guy. Like, the same template that you used in 2017 against, like, the alt-right, Richard Spencer people, you can't apply that template to mainstream conservatives. It just doesn't compute. It doesn't work. And all it does is just fuel that narrative of unfairness and, like, if you're going to be journalists, cover us fairly, have a conversation with us, as opposed to just like making up whatever story you want, because it doesn't compute to the people that use the product or listen to Jordan Peterson or watch Ben Shapiro.
I have the story. There's a kid who wrote for Cassie Dillon's website, Lone Conservative, and he wrote 2 reviews, one for each of my books. And the first one was nice, but he kind of ripped me a new one. But it was probably my favorite review because I know that he read the book.
Right.
And that I could not actually argue with his claims because some of them were right, some of them were valid, and I would still disagree. But it was an honest review. So then when he wrote a review for my second book, I actually went to him directly and I said, I like that you actually read the book and someone's going to get something out of this review that's honest because they could smell a puff piece a million miles away. He read my second book and he loved it. And I know that he did because I know what he's capable of when he reads something he doesn't like. And that's just a very micro example. But, I have a very small group of friends now. It's really kind of gotten smaller in terms of people who are active reporters and commentators because I have to be more selective about it because now I'm looking at some of these relationships and I'm like, which of them are genuine friendships and which of them are going to turn on me if they can get a headline and go talk with Oliver Darcy from CNN about how I'm a secret hate monger. It's all these things where it's like if anyone actually spends time on the platform, you understand it's not these terrible things you say it is. And people are like, well, why do you have Alex Jones and why do you have all these other people? It's like they have a right to be heard. And if you don't want to listen to them, don't follow them.
It's not been my experience. Like I was on Gab for 2 days and I was just like, I'm not going to be here. I don't want to be anywhere near Gab. Parler is not that. And so you guys do have terms of service. You do have rules. You do have like, I don't know why that's somehow been controversial from the other side where it's like, I can't believe that I got banned. Well, you can't say that and post that sort of thing. Like there are community standards, are there not?
Yeah, I mean, you can't do things that are going to draw harm to people. Doxing is a big thing. Somehow conservatives freak out whenever a celebrity gets doxed, but I've had to go ahead and report many people for doxing people because that's targeted harassment. If you're doing something that can bring genuine harm to somebody in any form, that's wrong. And we have to go ahead and make sure that we have a jury pool that assesses these things, so you're reviewed by your peers. It's not just an algorithm. The last time I tried to place ads on Facebook were for my book, How to Succeed in Politics, and I had to go through a PAC disclaimer as a political page just because of what the title was, and I could never appeal that. Yeah. So, I mean, most of the time, we're pretty lenient. We're the most lenient out there. And, I get a criticism from libertarians saying, well, the future should be decentralized. Okay, well, once you go ahead and put something on a blockchain-based system, once somebody puts child porn there, it doesn't matter how fast you're quick to censor it or do whatever. It's on the system forever. So there are pros and cons to all of this. But, social media itself will never be perfect. We just think that we're the most perfect of the imperfect systems out there. And we're constantly evolving. We don't call our people users anymore. We call them members because they're human beings, and the only two industries that call their clients users are social media and drug dealers. So it's everything from how does the system work to how do we communicate with each other. It's the spirit of parlay, actually having a conversation with each other, actually having a place where you're equal under the terms of service regardless as to who you are. And, we had Jocko Willink join the other day from the Jocko podcast. We've had, I'm a big fan of Tulsi Gabbard, so it's hard for me to deny that. But she's the first elected Democrat on the platform. She didn't have to come. She doesn't have to talk to these people. But I believe, and this is just my personal opinion, I believe that she's a genuine human being that wants what's better for people. It might be different, but I'm happy to have her because she's going to help make the platform a better place just by being who she is. And, my goal in life, I'm going to get to a point in my life where I'm not going to have social media. It's going to be a choice. It's going to get to the point where it's got to tap out. But if I'm going to, complain about this and having seen how it was from a user and client perspective, I might as well be part of the solution with a team of amazing people to go out and try and make things better.
So what's your is it Parler or Parlay? I've heard both.
It's Parler is the app. Parlay is what you call a post.
Okay.
So when you post something, you parlay something.
Got it. Okay. So what's your username on Parler? Is it like Tulsi Stan 420 or what is it?
It's just Remso, R-A-M-S-O. I'm the only Remso there.
Okay, and you can follow We Are Libertarians on there. You can follow me. All the usernames for Brian, Trisha, Reinhold on Parler are all on the We Are Libertarians Parler. You can follow our posts and everything there. It's so great having you on. Tell people where they can get the podcast and where you'd like to follow them, and just general plug before we go.
All right, everything and more, wearelibertarians.com, man.
That's what I like to hear. Toe the company line. All right, thanks so much, Remso.
Not a problem, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us here on We Are Libertarians, and we will see you again next week.
The record